Dash Cash, March 5th, 2023. This evening, we're going to talk about business insurance. Business insurance, for those of you who have a business, definite must have, especially if you have employees or you have a brick and mortar store. So there's a couple of them that we're going to talk about today. One of them is being general liability. So basically, what that encompasses are things like what's just in the name. So just imagine if you had a brick and mortar store. Let's just take a restaurant, for example. Okay, you're going to have liability for sure that you need protection for. And a lot of times when you're in a restaurant, typically you are leasing the place that you are doing your business. So liability would be something like this. Let's say you guys were mopping the floor or and you left the floor wet or you left the mop on the floor, someone had a slip or fall accident and they get hurt. Well, you're basically liable if someone sues you, and that would be protecting you in case of a lawsuit or in case someone wants to file for any type of medical injuries. All right, and this would be to your guest. The other thing that general liability insurance does is it protects for your personal property. But in this regard, personal property would be the business property for the entity that has the business insurance. So, say for example, you are ABC Restaurant. ABC Restaurant, one day you lock up, you go home, but there is a break-in to the restaurant. And what they end up doing is they end up stealing things like some money, some equipment, some of your supplies. All right. That is going to be the business property, okay, for the entity. And so you want to make sure that you actually give the proper value for your business insurance in terms of the property value. So here are some things that sometimes business insurance customers, like let's say in restaurants, they under account for. It'd be things like your refrigeration units if you own them, your kitchen equipment. Professional grade is expensive because you want to make sure everything is top notch. But what you don't want to do, once again, is skimp on the coverages there because should something happen, like let's say a fire comes through, burns down the entire restaurant, you're going to want the right equipment to basically start over. If you undervalued your equipment over there because you wanted to save a few bucks, now in a rebuild, you're going to want the insurance company to pay you what's properly out there. Well, you need to do your due diligence and be responsible as a business owner to properly inform your insurance agent or insurance company when they're quoting you and putting your policy on of the correct amount of value for your business personal property. Okay. The other thing, though, let's say now there's a fire, knock on wood, that happens, and you can't use the restaurant, obviously. Well, there's going to be something called, loss of use. Okay. Now the restaurant's not being used at all. You're losing income as a owner of a restaurant, and if you don't get any income coming in, it could be very, very tough times for you. But loss of use, that actually covers you in case of something happening like that, right? Where a fire comes in, uh, burns down the restaurant, you lose all your supplies, and then you can't have the ability to make money. That'll help. That'll help cover and help alleviate and help take care of you in those times. Okay. The other thing here too that you want to take note of is what were your expenditures in terms of tenant improvements. So when you got the space, did you have to spend money to make improvements in order to therefore open your restaurant? You want to take that into account as well. Sometimes with some entities or some folks, they forget to take that into account when they're letting us know about their property. Okay, so for example, in a restaurant, you might have talked about your equipment, but you know what? You built out a bar, okay, and you've got liquor there as well, and you've had some stools there as well. You had to create um, a separate wall or a separate area. Well, you spent money. Those are things that are tenant improvements, but those are things that you should definitely account for and not forget. And then probably the most important thing, and it's in a different insurance all by itself, but it is for your business. It's called work comp. And so Stash Cash on March 5th, 2023 is going to tell you what work comp is. Okay, so workman's comp, what that means is if you have employees, right? Not you because you actually own the business, and not any partners because they own the business. If you want to be excluded from work comp, there's a general exclusion form you need to sign. But work comp coverage is in case somebody gets hurt on the job. So back to the restaurant now. Um, if you have someone prepping in the kitchen and let's just say something falls on them, um, like they tip food on them, they get burnt, or a plate breaks on them and it cuts them and they have to go to the hospital and get looked at. Well, they got hurt on the job, so they need to be compensated and taken care of because not only is it by law you need to do this if you have employees, but there's other things that can happen. What if that employee gets injured and can't work or has loss of wages? You need to make sure that you're responsible as an employer to cover yourself and actually take care of your employees in case of such a loss. Depending on where you're at, I mean, there could be different penalties and different fines if you're not covered or you don't have work comp. And generally, why a partner or an owner would not have that on themselves is because if something happens to the owner and you own the restaurant, I mean, would you sue yourself or would you just try and take care of things on your own? I mean, that's basically the logic. But work comp is important, right? Is important because your employees are important. Your employees are probably going to be your most valuable resource in order to making sure your restaurant runs smoothly, the food gets made, it tastes good, it gets served properly. And in a restaurant, it's hectic. People run back and forth, especially if it's busy. They're trying to make they're trying to make sure the food gets out on time and not late. And then you've got dishes to wash, and you have people to seat. So there's a lot of moving parts. And so a restaurant would be a great example of an entity who might need work comp, and where a lot of things do happen and where injuries can occur. And as a business owner, the worst thing you can do is leave yourself exposed because at that point, I mean, you could be looking at, like I said, some fines, some penalties, and maybe a lot of upset workers once they find out that they're actually not covered. And that would never be a good thing for any type of business owner, no matter what type of business you are running where you have employees. Okay, so those two things, business liability insurance and work comp, yeah, they go hand in hand. There are going to be some businesses though where you might not need work comp because either number one, you don't have employees, or number two, they're employees who basically you don't give them a schedule, you don't tell them what time to come in. They are not W-2 wage earners. They're 1099. They kind of make their own they make their own time. They just perform, and when they perform, you pay them a commission, right? But obviously check out what it is in your own state and make sure that when you're talking to your insurance professional that you're running your exact scenario through so that they can give you advice on if you should get work comp, if you shouldn't get work comp, or if you're required to or not. All right, so that's about it. This is Stash Cash, and today is March 5th, 2023, and we just spoke to you about business insurance, general liability, and work comp. Thanks for tuning in.